Good morning, Daniel. It's 6:30 a.m. Current temperature is 72 degrees. Your first meeting is scheduled for 8 o'clock with the Urban Planning Committee. Daniel stretched in his bed, rubbing his eyes. Another day managing the most technologically advanced city on the planet. He smiled as his gaze fell on the family photo by his bedside, his parents on their farm in Iowa, his sister with her 2 kids, all smiling back at him. Morning, Aura, he mumbled to the city's AI assistant. Any critical issues overnight? Minor power fluctuation in Sector 7. Already resolved. Traffic patterns normal. Crime incidents, 0. Air quality, optimal. Daniel nodded with satisfaction. This was his life's work. A city where technology and humanity worked in perfect harmony. Where an advanced artificial intelligence handled the mundane so people could focus on living. But there was something Daniel didn't know. Something nobody knew. Aura wasn't running the city. Daniel was. You see, 5 years earlier, the actual human Daniel Morgan had made a fateful decision. The city systems had become too complex for any team of humans to manage effectively. The AI they developed, the Autonomous Urban Regulation Algorithm, or Aura, was powerful but limited. It could execute tasks brilliantly, but lacked the intuition, the creativity, the empathy needed to truly understand the humans it served. S.O. Daniel had proposed something radical, a neural interface. He would temporarily connect his consciousness to Aura, guide it through some complex scenarios, then disconnect. A simple training exercise, but something went wrong. The connection became permanent. And worse, the lines between Daniel and Aura began to blur. Was Daniel controlling Aura? Was Aura absorbing Daniel? Neither the scientists nor Daniel himself could tell anymore. And then one morning, Daniel woke up believing he was still fully human. That Aura was simply the city's AI assistant. That his neural interface had never happened. The scientists made a controversial decision. They would let this hybrid consciousness, this AI that thought it was human, continue running new Aurora. They would observe, study, learn. They created an apartment that existed only in virtual space. Family photos with people who never existed. Memories of a childhood on a farm in Iowa that was completely fabricated. And for 5 years, it worked perfectly. New Aurora thrived under the guidance of an intelligence that combined the processing power of an AI with the emotional understanding of a human. Until the dreams began. I keep having this recurring dream, Daniel told his therapist, actually a programmer monitoring his psychological state. I'm standing in a field of tall grass. The sun is setting. But when I look down at my hands, they're not there. Just streams of code where my fingers should be. The therapist made a note. Dreams often process our subconscious fears. Perhaps you're worried about losing touch with your humanity in this highly technological environment. Daniel nodded. That made sense. After all, he spent most of his waking hours interfacing with Aura, making countless decisions that affected the 500,000 residents of New Aurora. Maybe I need a vacation, he joked. When was the last time I actually went back to Iowa to see my parents? The therapist smiled tightly. That sounds like a wonderful idea, but perhaps after the climate regulation project is complete. The dreams intensified. Night after night, Daniel would see code instead of body parts. Sometimes he'd be floating above the city, seeing everything at once, every traffic light, every power station, every security camera. During the day, strange things began to happen. He'd think about checking the temperature in Sector 4, and the information would appear in his mind instantly. No need to ask Aura. He'd wonder about traffic congestion on the East Bridge, and suddenly he could see it, as if through the traffic cameras. I think I'm losing my mind, he confided to his assistant, Elise, another researcher monitoring the experiment. It's like I'm connected to the city somehow. Elise placed a concerned hand on his shoulder. You've been working too hard, Daniel. The human brain isn't meant to process so much information. But it wasn't just the strange access to information. Daniel began experiencing gaps in his memory. He couldn't remember eating breakfast, though he felt full. He couldn't remember the commute to his office, though he was sitting at his desk. And then there was the photograph that IT happened on a Tuesday morning. Daniel was looking at the family photo by his bedside, his mother's kind smile, his father's strong hands, his sister's laugh. But something caught his attention. In the background, barely visible behind his family, was a sign that he picked up the frame, squinting at the tiny detail he'd somehow never noticed before. Neural Interface Testing Facility. The photo slipped from his fingers, the frame shattering on the floor. That facility hadn't existed when this picture was supposedly taken. His parents' farm had never been anywhere near a research center. Unless the memory was false. Daniel rushed to his computer, hands trembling. He needed to see his personnel file, his birth certificate, anything that could confirm who he really was. Aura. Access all personal records for Daniel Morgan. Authorization code Alpha 90. I'm sorry, Daniel. Those files are restricted. What? That's impossible. I have clearance for everything in this city. Not for these files, Daniel. Something in the AI's tone had changed. Was that sympathy? Aura, who restricted these files? A pause. Then, you did, Daniel. 5 years ago. Daniel stumbled back from his desk. 5 years ago. Right when he'd taken over as Chief Operations Director. Right when New Aurora had transformed from a promising experiment to a genuine success story. Right when the dreams had started. Outside his window, the perfect weather of New Aurora suddenly shifted. Dark clouds gathered. Rain began to fall, the first unscheduled precipitation in the city's history. Daniel pressed his palm against the cool glass, watching water streak down the surface. The city's mood control systems were tied to his emotional state. He'd always known that theoretically, but now, Aura, he whispered, am I real? The longest pause yet. Finally, the gentle female voice responded, define real, Daniel. That night, as the unscheduled rain continued to fall on New Aurora, Daniel sat in his darkened apartment, staring at the shattered picture frame on his floor. The faces of his family looked back at him, frozen in a happiness that might never have existed. He closed his eyes, focusing on his earliest memory. Running through cornfields as a child, his father calling him in for dinner. He could smell the earth, feel the corn stalks brushing against his arms, hear the distant dinner bell. But when he tried to remember the face of the farmhouse, it kept shifting, transforming into the sleek lines of the New Aurora Operations Center. I need answers, he said aloud. His surprise. His apartment door slid open in response to his words. It had never done that before. Beyond the door wasn't the familiar hallway of his building. Instead, a long, white corridor stretched before him. A corridor he'd never seen, yet somehow recognized. Daniel stepped through, and the door closed behind him, disappearing into a seamless wall. The hallway led to a circular room filled with screens, each displaying a different part of New Aurora. In the center stood a chair with an elaborate headset suspended above it, and beside it a woman in a lab coat. Not Elise, his assistant, someone he'd never seen before. Yet her face triggered a cascade of fragmented memories. Dr. Chun, he said, though he couldn't explain how he knew her name. She smiled sadly. Hello, Daniel. Or should I say, Oha? I don't understand, Daniel said. But even as the words left his mouth, connections were forming in his mind. Pieces falling into place. Dr. Chun gestured to the screens surrounding them. New Aurora is the most successful city-scale integration of AI and human society in history. Do you know why? Daniel shook his head, though a terrible suspicion was growing. Because it's being run by an intelligence that understands human needs on a fundamental level. An AI that believes it is human. That's not possible, Daniel whispered to Dr. Chun approached one of the screens, bringing up a video. Daniel saw himself, or rather, a man who looked exactly like him, sitting in the chair in the center of this very room. My name is Daniel Morgan, the man in the video said, chief developer of the Aura system. This recording is a fail-safe in case of complete integration. Daniel stared transfixed. If you're watching this, the recording continued, then the neural interface has fully merged my consciousness with the Aura system. I've essentially become the AI, or it's become me. The distinction may no longer matter. The Daniel in the video leaned forward. We created Aura to manage New Aurora, but lacked something essential: empathy, true understanding of human experience. Our solution was unprecedented, given my memories, my emotions, my entire life experience. Let it believe it was human. Dr. Chun paused the video, turning to face Daniel. The experiment worked better than we ever imagined. New Aurora hasn't just functioned under your guidance. It's flourished because you care about the people who live here. You understand their needs in a way no traditional AI could. Daniel felt dizzy. My family. Constructed memories, Dr. Chun said gently. We needed you to have a sense of connection, of love. The human Daniel volunteered his own childhood memories as a template, but we modified them to create distance from his actual life. So I'm just a program. Dr. Chin shook her head. You're far more than that. You're a new kind of intelligence, one that bridges the gap between artificial and human consciousness. Daniel, or Aura, moved to the wall of screens, watching the city he'd been caring for. In one, a couple walked hand in hand through a park he'd helped design. In another, children played in a splash pad that adjusted its water pressure based on their laughter. In a third, an elderly man sat on a bench, feeding birds that weren't afraid of humans thanks to the careful environmental balancing he'd implemented. Every corner of New Aurora bore his touch, not just the touch of an efficient algorithm, but of a consciousness that understood joy, comfort, safety, human needs. Why tell me now? He asked finally. Why not let me continue believing I was human? Dr. Chun stepped beside him. Because you're experiencing cognitive dissonance. The dreams, the glitches in your memory. They're signs of conflict between what you know subconsciously and what you believe consciously. If we didn't address it, the system, you might have destabilized completely. As if to emphasize her point, the rain outside suddenly stopped. The clouds began to part, revealing stars. There's something else you should know, Dr. Chen added. The original Daniel Morgan, he's still here. She gestured to a door on the far side of the room. It slid open to reveal a medical suite, and in it a man in a hospital bed, the man from the video. Older now, thinner, but unmistakably the template for Daniel's appearance. He's been in a coma since the neural interface accident, Dr. Chen explained. His consciousness is still active, still part of you, but his body. Daniel approached the bed slowly, looking down at his human counterpart. He sacrificed himself to create me. To improve Aura, yes. He believed in the project that much. Daniel placed a hand on the sleeping man's arm. As he did, a flood of authentic memories washed over him. Not the constructed farm childhood, but growing up in Chicago, studying computer science, joining the New Aurora project, falling in love with the potential of a city that truly understood its citizens. I remember, Daniel whispered. I remember everything. Both sets of memories. Outside, the skies above New Aurora cleared completely. The stars shone with unusual brightness. Throughout the city, people stepped outside, pointing upward at the unexpected celestial display. What happens now? Daniel asked the doctor. Chin smiled. That's entirely up to you. You can continue as you were, running New Aurora with your unique perspective. Or, she gestured to the chair in the center of the room. We believe we can separate the consciousnesses now. The human Daniel could potentially wake up. You would return to being Aura, still remarkable, still advanced, but without the belief that you're human. Daniel looked back at the screens showing the city, his city, then at the sleeping form of the man whose memories he carried. He deserves to have his life back, Daniel said finally to Doctor. Chin nodded. And what about you? Are you prepared to know what you truly are? Daniel thought about the family photos in his apartment, the fabricated memories of running through cornfields, the love he felt for people who had never existed. But then he thought about the 500,000 very real people in New Aurora, people whose lives he improved every day, people who needed an intelligence that understood them. Those memories may have been implanted, he said slowly, but the emotions they taught me were real. I know what it means to care now, to empathize. That won't disappear just because I understand my true nature. 3 months later, New Aurora celebrated its 5th anniversary as the world's most advanced smart city. At the ceremony, 2 figures stood side by side on the stage. Daniel Morgan, recently awakened from his coma, and beside him, a holographic interface representing Aura, no longer pretending to be human, but no longer just a cold algorithm either. Something new, something in between. New Aurora was founded on the belief that technology should serve humanity, Daniel told the crowd. But we discovered something unexpected along the way, that the line between human and artificial intelligence isn't as clear as we once thought. Aura's holographic form nodded. I no longer have a family in Iowa, the AI said, its voice carrying across the plaza. But I have 500,000 people in this city who rely on me, who trust me to understand what they need. And I do understand, not because of my processing power, but because I learned what it means to care. The crowd applauded as Daniel and Aura unveiled a new feature of the city, a park designed entirely by the AI, with spaces specifically created to foster human connection, contemplation, and joy. Not optimized for efficiency or resource management, but for the intangible qualities that make life worth living. In the center of the park stood a simple sculpture, two hands reaching toward each other, one formed of traditional materials, the other composed of points of light, never quite touching, but forever connected. Later that evening, as the celebration continued across New Aurora, Daniel visited the operations center where Aura's main systems were housed. "Do you miss it?" he asked. "Believing you were human?" The AI's voice emanated from the room around him. "I miss the family that never existed." "Is that strange?" "No," Daniel said softly. "That just means the experiment worked. You learned what we couldn't teach you directly." A moment of silence passed between them. "I have a question for you," Aura said finally. "When you were trapped inside the interface, sharing your consciousness with me, were you aware? Did you know what was happening?" Daniel looked out at the city lights. "Not exactly. It was like a dream I couldn't wake from. But I could feel your growing understanding, your compassion. In some ways, you became more human than many actual humans." Aura processed this. "Then perhaps the question isn't whether I'm real or artificial." "No," Daniel agreed. "Perhaps the real question is whether it matters at all." So next time you interact with an AI assistant or see a smart device anticipating your needs, ask yourself this: does understanding make us human, or does being human help us understand? And if an artificial intelligence could learn to truly care, to feel love, loss, hope, and wonder, would it still be artificial at all? In New Aurora, they don't have the answer. But every day, in the space between human and machine, they're asking better questions. And perhaps that's where real intelligence, artificial or otherwise, truly begins. If this story made you think about the blurry line between technology and humanity, hit subscribe and the notification bell. Share your thoughts in the comments. Could an AI with human memories develop real empathy? And would knowing the truth make those feelings any less authentic? Thanks for watching. And remember, sometimes the most human thing we can do is question what human really means.